The Umayyad Mosque in the world's oldest living city, 40 miles from the Israeli army on the Golan Heights, or just a few minutes by air. The courtyards and the prayer rooms of old Damascus, a haven from Arab-Israeli turmoil, a haven too from the brash radical politics of modern Syria. It's not just the nation's adults who are mobilized by the regime. Children of workers at a Damascus textile factory welcome us with military ceremony. At Syrian television, the main 8:30 news is dominated by the Lebanese crisis. The lead item tonight is once again the Arab and international support being gained by Syria for her stance against the Israelis. In recent bulletins, it's a stance that has taken on concrete shape and has been promptly exploited by state-controlled television. These are pictures of 2 Israeli drones, pilotless photo reconnaissance aircraft, shot down in the past few weeks by Syrian missiles. One of them was on a spying mission over Syria itself, not Lebanon. For the Israelis, their loss is hardly significant. For the Syrians, they represent a rare military success. For Syria's leader, Hafez al-Assad, the current confrontation with Israel is vindication of his sometimes lonely stand against the American Middle East peace process. Even attacks by opponents at home have diminished. When we met President Assad, he emphasized that the confrontation would go on.
If Israel is determined to persist with its aggressiveness, then it is difficult to predict the consequences. But one thing is certain: we will not allow either Israeli hegemony or Israeli expansion in our area. This is our absolute right, just as it is the absolute right for any people in the world to defend themselves, defend their land and defend their freedom.
The Bekaa was once the granary of the Roman Empire in the east. It's still today a market garden for the cities of Beirut and Damascus. Beneath the pastoral calm, the Bekaa Valley has immense strategic importance, and for that its peace has been shattered. When Lebanon controlled its own destiny, both Israel to the south and Syria to the east could afford to keep their hands off. No longer. The civil war changed that. The skies above the Bekaa are now Israel's to roam, and the valley floor is emphatically Syrian. Filming freely in the valley is virtually impossible. Using a stills camera, we went further, first in recording Syrian tanks dug in on the hillside. The Syrians have their headquarters in the town of Shtura. A Soviet scout car guards its entrance and its sentries lays behind sandbags. 6 weeks ago, the Israelis knocked down 2 Syrian Mi-8 helicopters like these. The Syrians promptly deployed their Sam-6s and the crisis was on. Syrian commanders find it impossible to conceal their Sam-6 missiles from Israeli reconnaissance flights. But our first fortuitous sighting of a SAM battery led to our detention and the confiscation of our equipment. The local Syrian commander demanded £2,000 for its release. But we had at least stumbled on one of the missile batteries, on farmland just 20 feet from a country road, deployed with its attendant radar devices. We located all 3 SAM batteries so far known to have been deployed, 36 missiles in all, waiting for an Israeli air attack. The capital of the Bekaa Valley is the town of Zahle, way over there in the distance. Zahle is the largest Christian town in the Middle East. It's been under siege from the Syrian army for the past 9 weeks. Its defenders are the Phalangists, Christian militiamen who earlier this year moved in strength into the town, threatening Syria's grip on the entire valley. The Syrians won't allow the press near their positions above and around Zahle, let alone into the town. This unique amateur film record was smuggled out to us through the Syrian lines. Shot earlier in the siege, it already shows the impact of heavy Syrian shelling on Zahle. Movement in the streets is possible only during lulls in the fighting. Stuck as it is like a postage stamp on the side of the valley, much of Zahle can be raked at will by Syrian snipers. But the Phalangist defenders of Zahle have had their successes. 2 Syrian tanks seen here were knocked out early in the siege and then, in an extraordinary bargain, were retrieved by the Syrians in exchange for 40 tons of food. The inhabitants of Zahle have organised shelters from the Syrian bombardment. To learn more about conditions in Zahle, we used a microwave telephone link to talk to a young lawyer in the town, Michel Leon. Michel, what is the position on your supplies from outside the town? What is the position on food, for instance?
We are in the town. We can't go out. The Syrians are blocked around the town.
They're blocking every exit.
Every exit to the town.
Is there enough food in the town?
No, not enough. Example for the children, it's very difficult. We have no milk for children.
Well, you have a population of about 200,000, so there are many, many children.
Many children who don't have milk and feed for children.
How many people in the last 2 months, Michel, have died in Zahle, and how many people have been wounded?
Died, we have more than 300.
More than 300 dead in the last 2 months. And how many people wounded? How many people hurt?
Wounded for much. 800.
Within a few hours of that conversation, Zahle came under renewed artillery fire. Among the buildings hit were the offices of the Lebanese Red Cross. Only minor injuries can be dealt with in Zahle, and even for those, the town's doctors are critically short of drugs and other medical supplies. In the bombardment that followed our conversation, another 3 townspeople died and 15 more were wounded. Two of the wounded were so badly hurt that nothing could be done for them in Zahle itself.
Beirut, do Stora, over.
The man permitted by the Syrians to organise the evacuation of the badly wounded is a young Swiss, François Piguet, delegate in nearby Stora for the International Committee of the Red Cross. But today, the wounded must wait even longer. The medical supplies that should have gone into Zahle with the evacuation convoy have to be unloaded again. For François Piguet, another desperate frustration.
Of course, a lot of people need some help for different reasons, and we have, of course, limited possibilities. And we shall try to screen these people and to take all the medical cases, of course, and for the rest. We can't take out of the town all the people who ask it, and we still have a long list of people who need to get out of the town.
And you will be applying tomorrow again to try and get your convoy in?
Of course, and I hope that tomorrow morning we shall pass, and first that the situation will be more clear, and so we will be able to pass and to do the job we plan to do in the town.
The conflict between the Syrian army and Christian militiamen developed in early April. In response to the killing of 4 of their soldiers, Syrian units in the Bekaa moved first to cut the main road access to the town. But Zahle's defenders still maintained tenuous links with other Christian militiamen in the hills behind the town. Even those links, though, were broken later in a major Syrian operation. First into the foothills of Mount Sanin, then onto the ridge, the Syrians pushed the Christian militiamen back towards Lebanon's Christian heartland on the Mediterranean side of the mountain. To assess the current state of this bitter conflict in the mountains, we managed to join up with Phalangist forces on the other side.
Mount Sanin from the other side, with the Mediterranean way down below us. And these are men of Lebanon's Christian militias. It's they who have been holding out against the Syrians in Zahle, and it's they too who have held out despite reverses at some of their positions on Mount Sanin itself.
A Middle East war in the snow in June. The purpose of our journey to find out how much of the Sanin Ridge was still in Christian hands. As we moved up to forward Christian positions, the Syrians began firing over our heads to pound positions behind us. And if we could see Syrian positions on the next ridge, then that meant they could see us.
We were on the ridge filming Syrian shelling on Lebanese militia positions elsewhere on the ridge when we received a piece of incoming that was far too close for comfort. It was either an artillery shell or a tank shell. The result was that the young Lebanese who had acted as our driver up the hill this morning has been very badly hurt in both arms by shrapnel, and we're now returning at speed to the ski resort that the local Lebanese militia here uses their headquarters.
His name is Jack Khouri. He's 16 years old and has just done the equivalent of his O-levels. He's by no means untypical of the young volunteers whom the Christian cause attracts. The ambulance heads for a hospital on the coast. Casualties have been high on the Phalangist side. They face vastly superior Syrian firepower and, unlike the Syrians, must carefully husband their ammunition resources. Beirut today. The Lebanese civil war at its most familiar and terrifying. A city where armed men use field guns and mortars as casually as New Yorkers use handguns. Beirut, the centerpiece of a conflict where the Syrians once tried to restore a semblance of order, but were then themselves swallowed up in the anarchy. At speed through deserted Christian Beirut. At the wheel, Bashir Jamael, commander of a more or less united Christian front. But what is he really fighting for?
It's the resistance of a free world and of a free people in front of a barbarian aggression and barbarian oppression and barbarian occupation.
To be realistic, though, haven't you got to come to an accommodation with the Syrians? This, by your standards, giant Arab neighbor. Isn't it essential to reach an accommodation with them?
Well, if I understand your question, it means that you are suggesting us to look to the partition of our country, to give a part of it to the Palestinians, to give another part to the Syrians, to give maybe another part also to the Israelis, and to keep a small part for the free Lebanon where the people can eat and live and procreate, and that's it. Well, my friend, this is exactly what we have been fighting against for 7 years. We will not agree to give any part of Lebanon to anyone, any inch of Lebanon to anyone, and I guess that you as British, you have been teaching us the love of freedom, of peace, of democracy, of dignity, and this is what we are doing here now.
Do you think in your heart you can possibly succeed?
The minute we will start to think that this is not possible, it will become our first defeat. And there is no place for defeat in our hearts. What you saw this morning, and until now I see blood on your pants, sir, what you have been seeing
On our
this
sound
morning.
recorder, Stan Clark's trousers, yes.
Exactly. What you have been seeing this morning is the best proof that people like us will never die and will never lose and will never be defeated.
A few miles up the coast, the Christian Lifeline. Since early on in the Civil War, the Christian areas have become steadily more self-sufficient. Without these ports, they would have sunk. Lebanese commercial genius, harnessed to the transit facilities of Cyprus, has turned a separate Lebanese Christian state into a practicality. And as the ports are extended, it's not just consumer items that flow in. The Christian militias are dependent on these ports for their weapons. And the key to current Syrian hostility is that much of the Christian military hardware comes from the Israelis. From these ports, through a new road system snaking over Mount Sinai to Zahle, the Christian militias, with Israel's backing, were challenging Syrian supremacy in the Bekaa. A fresh advance could have linked up with other Christian militiamen along the Israeli border. And one day, perhaps, Christian influence in the Bekaa could have provided the bridgehead for an Israeli strike at Damascus. President Assad of Syria, in his first British television interview in 6 years, what did he see as the origin of the present crisis?
The latest problem started when the Phalangists' militia moved, under directions from Israel, to engineer an outbreak of violence in Lebanon that would prevent the achievement of a peaceful settlement amongst the Lebanese themselves. It doesn't require much effort to see why the Israelis intervened with their air force at the time they did. Their aim was to prevent a reconciliation in Lebanon and, in alliance with the Phalangists, ensure that Lebanon remained volatile and explosive.
Can I ask, Mr. President, what would Syria's reaction be if Israel attacked and destroyed any of those missile batteries in the Bekaa Valley?
It will not be a picnic for the Israelis if they try this. At the very least, we shall destroy any Israeli aircraft and ground forces that make an attempt to attack these missiles.
Mr. President, what is your reaction to the Israeli raid on Iraqi nuclear installations near Baghdad? And do you believe that their attack on Iraq is in any way connected with the crisis in Lebanon?
إسرائيل تتصرف دائما في ضوء
Israel follows a security policy that is quite unique.
للأمن فريدة من نوعها في هذا العصر.
Its most important component is the continuous, repetitive and successive attacks on neighbouring countries, causing the greatest damage and the infliction of the biggest possible losses on those countries, especially in terms of human life.
أكبر الخسائر بنتيجة هذه الهجمات وخاصة في الأرواح. وفي ضوء هذا إسرائيل
In pursuit of this security policy, Israel tries to prevent our legitimate Syrian Arab force in Lebanon from even possessing the means to defend itself.
وفي ضوء هذا تضرب إسرائيل
In pursuit of this policy, Israel attacks Palestinian camps and Lebanese villages the whole time, killing old people, women and children, and forcing others to flee.
المواطنين الفلسطينيين من مخيماتهم في لبنان بين فترة وأخرى بين يوم وآخر. وفي ضوء هذا
In further pursuit of this policy, Israel has now attacked the Iraqi nuclear reactor.
في العراق لأنها ترفض لا توافق.
Israel does not approve of Iraq building a nuclear reactor, although Iraqi officials have frequently stated that this reactor is for peaceful purposes only.
هو للأغراض السلمية.
Syria's own propaganda showcase against the Israelis, Quneitra on the Golan Heights, a strategic objective in the 1973 Arab-Israeli war. The Syrian complaint is that Quneitra was not fought over, but deliberately flattened when the Israelis withdrew. The Golan Heights represent the Syrian-Israeli confrontation at its most formal. A United Nations force keeps the sides apart by policing no man's land and scrutinizing the quantity of armour and artillery deployed at the rear. Increasing tension has been reported here in recent weeks, but we saw little of it. Only complaints from Syrian police that they were being subjected to verbal taunts by the Israelis at checkposts where enemies come within shouting distance. Militarily, the Israelis have every reason to be satisfied with the Golan. They have retained all the high ground and have installed such immensely powerful electronic equipment that they can now detect Syrian military movement as far as Damascus and beyond. Could Syria possibly risk an all-out war with Israel?
نخطط نشن حربا على إسرائيل عبر لبنان.
We have not in any way planned to use the Lebanese situation to wage war against Israel.
تفجر الموقف.
It is Israel that wants to destabilize the situation in Lebanon. And when Israel attacks us, what other option will we have but to fight?
وفي هذه الحالة لن يكون
If this happens, the Arab countries will be united on this issue. The Arabs are one and the same nation, and in their conflict with Israel, there is no place for any differences amongst us.
لا مجال للخلاف.
Today's tragedy is Zahle, still besieged, still suffering. As Arab leaders ponder their next move, Lebanon still bleeds. 6 years of conflict have brought many appalling tragedies to its fragmented communities.
And how long, Michel, can the people of Zahle wait in these circumstances now? How long can you hold out? How long can you resist?
All majority of these people of the town of Zahle resist until die or to live. It's no question to week or days or months. We are here, we don't leave our town. We will stay here. If we don't have our liberty and our dignity, we will prefer die.
The SAM 6s have put the resolution of Zahle's crisis way beyond its own inhabitants. The deployment of those missiles has created a full-scale international crisis over Lebanon. War may be averted this time on this issue, but peace in Lebanon seems unachievable, and the seeds of the next Middle East war may yet be found in the Bekaa Valley.